Alright guys, Black Myth Wukong just got a lot more reveals and it seems it won't be going easy on us. The first 2 hours will be packed with bosses and secret encounters, plus we have even more info on the first few hours of gameplay thanks to a brand new PC Games article. Also, to celebrate the launch, I'm giving away a copy of the game on all available platforms. Simply make sure you're a subscriber, like the video and leave a comment down below. And if there's enough support, we're probably going to follow soon with even more giveaways ahead of launch. That being said, many previewers noted how the game is certainly not easy, with enemies being highly aggressive, bosses are relentless, sometimes featuring secondary phases, and you don't even start with too many healing potions early on anyway. PC Games describes the game as a flashy and frenetic new contender to the Souls genre, but one that also resembles combat-driven action games such as Devil May Cry and even the recent God of War games, just as much as it does the FromSoft formula. So it's nice to see that such a highly anticipated game is finally getting some praises. A common for all media previews that I've seen for Black Myth Wukong until now is how fluid the animations and combat were, with IGN even describing it as stunningly gorgeous despite some of the controversy that they unsuccessfully tried to stir up. But one thing PC Games notes is battles are immediately faster than anticipated, and spamming dodges is a recipe for disaster because of the regen time after every third successive attempt. Think of this like the dodges in Bayonetta. You would do 3 very fast dodges, but after the third one, you would be pretty much left with a very lengthy recovery time, which is not ideal. So early on, you're kind of doing this dance of carefully dodging enemy attacks and then entering with melee hits while being careful at your own focus bar, because both these actions will consume stamina. As previously shown, the game doesn't actually feature a block mechanic, except maybe for some of the projectile attacks, for which you can twirl your staff to block them, but that doesn't work on melee hits. For that, you're kind of forced into timing your dodges really well. This is why perfect dodging will be particularly effective, as they can both slow down time, letting you squeeze in a few more hits on the enemy boss, but also regenerate stamina, or in this case, like I said, focus, with later on skill upgrades. Not all enemies, however, are affected by the slow time effect equally. While it's definitely going to increase in duration and effectiveness against some of the trash mobs, bosses can sometimes shrug it off more easily. Additionally, it also doesn't help that early on your HP bar is minuscule and you won't have too many potions to heal up, but I'm very sure that a lot of you guys who played Elden Ring are already used to that. But from the looks of it, it does sound like the early 2 hours are meant to challenge you to become better at the game. This is their purpose, which in turn will help you to better deal with the increasingly tougher challenges. Think of it as Margit feeling super difficult on your first playthrough when you started Elden Ring, but once you kinda got into the groove of it, maybe ran the boss fight a few times, you got better at understanding how the rest of the game plays out. This is kinda like that. Another aspect that was covered in more detail is that Black Myth Wukong is a lot more linear, at least early on. However, it does eventually open up with adjacent paths to discover. It's not open world though, with the article mentioning the early game doesn't give you space to drive your own discovery or ponder and fret over the road to come, nor does it present any intriguing NPCs who aren't just talking upgrade menus. Additionally, they also noted that there were instances where they spotted what they assumed were explorable areas only to be hid by invisible walls. That being said, there are reasons to still go out there and explore every corner, however small it might be, even early on, and there are secrets to uncover, such as enemies hiding behind trees, treasure chests, and even optional bosses just ever so slightly off the beaten path. According to the preview, it seems encountering a new boss happens every 15 minutes or so, which is really great because it means you can upgrade your stuff faster, but they also noted that the concentration of bosses even early on seems to be higher even compared to many of the Souls games. Also, good to note, some bosses' second phases can have a secret trigger, so it's not just that you fight with them, the way you fight with them is also important. Previously, IGN China reported that the Macaque Chief triggered a second phase if its health was reduced within a certain time limit. Also, some bosses will teach you some of their skills too, like for example the Stone Solid skill, which freezes enemies in place momentarily. A very useful and strong ability is actually one that the Tiger Vanguard boss uses, and he also ends up teaching you that according to the previews. But as we talked about skills, let's also talk about some of the new abilities over here. We've got info on some of them, and the upgrade system is said to be closely resembling that of Sekiro. So as you gain more XP, or in this case named Will, this fills up an XP bar, which once fully filled gives you 1 point of upgrade to spend into the skill tree. However, if you die before filling that bar completely, a portion of that will be lost upon death. Kinda like Elden Ring, in which you lose runes, except in this case you only lose like a portion of that XP bar. But once fully filled, you won't lose that point. Once it's acquired, it's there to stay, and you can then spend it at any time, either at a special shrine or at any of the bonfire-like checkpoints. So we talked about the freezing spell previously, but there are others you can unlock relatively early. Another one is the one that lets you turn your staff into an extendable platform, which then lets you crash down on unsuspecting enemies. This will cost mana and will have a cooldown, which is why you're going to want to pay attention to them and use them in the most important moments in boss fights. But you can also transform temporarily into some of the previously defeated bosses, which in turn also provides a second health bar and many times also extra abilities. So good to note is that shape-shifting as a mechanic is going to be paramount in this game, and you'll get to unlock extra forms from optional boss encounters. Some of them are more useful at traversal and skipping enemies, like such as for example the flying bug form that we've seen in the early previews, while others may be more suited for combat, like the burly bipedal rock form that replaces your normal attacks with a damaging body slam. But we've seen forms that can pretty much turn you into a whole boss, like the Fireblade Wolf. This one was said to be one of the strongest. It gives you some insanely strong attacks for a period of time with highly damaging super attacks that can be used as you get out of a dodge. And this form can also use lightning fast dash attacks, practically just transforming you into your own version of a boss. And there are more forms like these that it seems you're going to be incentivized to go out there and get. It also seems like these will prove very useful strategically in combat, especially the fact that they can also give an extra HP bar, at least some of them. So you can actually use those in clutch situations when you want to preserve your primary HP bar, maybe you're left out of any healing potions, or just need that extra push to take down a difficult boss. But in all of this, the key word is adaptability, with lots of ways to tackle on challenges, and the game actually kind of forces you to adapt to combat and not stick to the same build that you think is the best. So PC Games describes a difficult encounter versus a snake boss fight where the player had to really step back and strategize for the boss ahead. So in this case, and I quote, "I need to step back and spend 5 sifting through everything at my disposal. I am a terrible hoarder of consumables and prone to finding one combat approach, weapon or ability that I like or enjoy, then stubbornly, often stupidly sticking with it through thick and thin. This is especially true in Souls-likes, but Black Myth was having none of my nonsense. Not since Sekiro have I felt such an unavoidable push towards getting good. And so I read the description of my item consumables, I think carefully about my equipped abilities, and in the heat of the battle I push myself to use every power and carefully monitor their cooldowns. Finally, it all clicks into place, and by the skin of my teeth, I squeak by." And yeah, one of these mistakes I often find myself doing as well, especially in Elden Ring, is just sticking to a build because I like it or because I become too complacent with it. Of course, in this case, Elden Ring also kind of has a limiting and increasingly prohibitive nature of the respect system, so you're kind of forced to not do it as often because you're consuming all of the items needed to do that in the first place. However, in Elden Ring, you could overcome some of the challenges by just grinding more levels or smithing stones to upgrade your gear, your stats, and just indirectly reduce the boss difficulty. Well, it seems that that's going to be slightly different in Black Myth Wukong as well. So the game's hardest fights are perfectly calibrated to demand your all, and the world and systems surrounding them won't let you grind your way to victory, PC Games article notes. Not that this is not possible, you can still of course upgrade your stuff as you progress. There's obviously a progression system, but the upside is that the game isn't too rigid, so it does mean that you're kind of incentivized to try out different builds by allowing you to freely respec your abilities. Should your current setup be subpar, or assuming you encounter a mechanic that's hard to overcome, it looks like the game encourages switching styles to counter it. Also noteworthy to point out is that in just a couple of hours of training through these challenges, it feels you come so far with the arsenal and prowess that non-boss encounters can be left feeling easy outside of the boss arena. And I mean, I'm all up for that. I do like feeling a sense of progression and becoming stronger and having an easier time to overcome regular enemies, but I still want that challenge when fighting boss enemies. If it makes any sense, it seems that Black Myth Wukong is doing exactly that. Now, on a final note, since we talked about adaptability, we do know that stances will also play a huge role in your combat kit. Tower stance will actually be one of the first you get to unlock early on top of the default one, and it's one of the 3 available, with the remaining smash and the thrust stances being unlocked sometimes later. But tower stance is the one that lets you swap your regular technique, the chargeable overhead heavy attack, with the ability that lets you stand on your staff, so this lets you avoid damage, and if you can charge it up successfully, you can then follow up with a very powerful ground slam. You kind of do this very strong and cool looking flip attack and take enemies by surprise, plus deal lots of damage. All in all, looks like the preview of Black Myth Wukong is really interesting. Looks like an awesome game. Of course, there's going to be a lot of content surrounding the game once we get closer to release, so if you want to see a lot of guides, more gameplay and exclusive details, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like below, plus we of course also have the giveaways coming up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.